Alright, 6:30, I'll bring the meeting to order. First up, modifications and changes. Is there anything on tonight's agenda to change or add? Hearing none, I'll move on to public comment. Is there anybody here from the public that wishes to speak tonight? Or does everyone have an agenda item?
They're on the agenda.
Alright, I don't see any hands raised on Zoom either, so we'll move on to review and approval for the minutes, August 9th, 2022. Did everyone get a chance to look those over? Did you find any errors or anything left out? Must be good then.
Don't grab it over here.
Alright, if there's no errors or omissions, I will hear a motion to approve them.
Move we approve.
Second.
Danny with the first, Eli with the second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Okay. Up next, Lincoln Park application for fundraiser. Is that you guys?
That is,
Yeah, I believe that.
I'll keep them up here. They came in and put a park use application permit in for Lincoln Park. Their daughters
Yes.
are looking to do a lemonade stand and a bake sale stand in the park this Saturday, from 10 to 1. It's a fundraiser for their soccer.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh,
That's a good idea.
that was my question.
So,
That was my question as well.
This is for a soccer program,
No, the school that my children attend, we have a lot of kids that want to play on the team, that their parents can't afford cleats, can't afford anything for their soccer and everything, so that whatever the girls make, all but 20% of it, they want to donate to the school to be able to buy those things for those children.
oh,
And they've been wanting to have a lemonade stand, so I figured if it was going towards something, they could have fun with it.
So this is for the team?
Mm-hmm.
and these children who are disadvantaged are on the team, or going to be on the team.
I think that sounds like a good idea. If there are no objections, I will hear a motion to approve.
Move. Second.
Eli with the first, Sandy with the second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay.
Sell lots of lemonade.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Throw in an extra slice now and then. Maybe even have a cookie or two.
Yeah.
So, do we need to have any paperwork with us or anything?
we'll send you, sorry Sam,
To my address?
we will send you just that this is approved and you guys should be good to go.
Okay.
Great,
Thank you,
thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Easy. Have a good night.
You too?
Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
That's
Yeah.
Alright, Tractor Supply allocation extension. What do we got here?
So essentially, they applied back in 2020 and they have 2 years to follow through the process. They haven't yet, so we're extending their allocations. And they have been emailed and aware that they also have to pay.
Yeah, there's a fair amount there.
Okay, so 2 years ago, they applied for more allocations. We awarded it. They have 2 years to hook up or pay for, which they haven't hooked up or paid for.
So Pomerlow is the one who initially put the request in because they owned the land at the time. Tractor Supply or their contractor who now will be the ones paying it. John's been in communication with them. They're aware of this and they're also aware we aren't hooking anything up for them until this is paid.
Have anything to say about it?
I think it's just timing that the project was delayed a little bit. I'll let John.
No,
do
they're
this.
aware they're gonna be paying the non-amount.
So are they requesting an extension
They are.
from the board?
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward, mate.
I think the game plan is that they're gonna be open prior to Christmas is the timeline, I believe, like Gary.
They've got the peaked part of their roof on today.
Yeah, so I
Frame.
think that's the game plan. It was originally for October. They're delayed a couple months. So the game plan right now is that their target date, is to be open prior to Christmas.
How long of an extension are they requesting?
Lori's the one that brought this to our attention. They haven't formally requested an
Should
extension.
we do like till the end of the year?
I would think maybe through the end of this year.
Revisit it if we have to, but we shouldn't have to.
I don't think we'll have to, they're aware and they'll pay it. I think there was a miscommunication between, because this went to Pomerlow and now Tractor Supply, but John was on the phone and email with them, and I think we've got it sorted out. They have the original award letter with the fees now, and it should clear itself up by the end of the year.
Right, okay, so Tractor Supply owns, obviously, the building. Do they own the land?
Well, have they taken possession
Well,
of it
no,
yet?
we're working with the landowners. We have an emailing them. It's,
So is it still Pomerlow that's the one that's gonna be hooking it up?
no, it's
No,
gonna be.
they sold it.
Yep, no, it's gonna be this other building.
Now, how does that work? Does allocations that have been awarded but not hooked up transfer to new owners?
These were given with a purpose for Tractor Supply, so I'm not sure. I'd have to read through the specific language in the ordinance if there's anything there, but I know Pomerlow requested these specifically for the purpose of Tractor Supply.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's enough language, I would assume.
I would assume we're good.
To be
Yeah,
clear, okay.
it's a great question though.
Yeah, okay. Want to give an extension to the end of the year?
We want them open, we want our money, so I would think that we should.
I think they're gonna need water and sewer. at
They,
some point,
yeah,
too,
they
so.
won't sell too much without it.
Okay, I will hear a motion to extend Pomerlow / Tractor Supply's allocation allotments that we approved 2 years ago. Extend that to the end of 2022.
Okay.
I make the motion.
Leonard has it first. Eli with the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, that was easy enough. Up next, VEPSA presentation in budget preparation for 2023 and energy price discussion.
So we have.
So we have
Yeah, go ahead.
on the Zoom meeting, we have Ken Nolan with EPSA, Sean with EPSA, and then Ken Santamore, who's also with EPSA, is here with us physically. They're gonna, I guess, discuss. I did send out kind of a little packet. I don't know if I got to read it first. In your packet was, I think 15 or 13 page report that Sean will probably more than likely highlight here in a few minutes. I guess the gist of what we want to discuss is the beginning stages of AMI, and then Ken probably has some other budgetary scenarios, and then Sean will be talking kind of a high level of where we're purchasing power as we kind of move forward. So I'll let Ken take it from there. And
good evening. I guess we're going to start on the AMI, John. Is that preferred?
yeah, go right ahead.
Great. So Ken Santamore has been leading that project for us, and being in the room, I think he's probably better positioned to talk details with you. But I think we've talked about this project in generalities for a couple of times over the last year, 18 months. We're now getting to the point where we're going to need your decision on whether to move forward or not. The VEPSA board approved moving forward with the contract with the Clara at their last board meeting. So we're finalizing that right now. That would be an agreement between VEPSA and the vendor. And then the next step would be for each member to decide whether they want to proceed or not. We're also putting together a filing on behalf of all of the members with the Public Utility Commission. That's one step that's required before we can actually proceed with deployment. So we're lining all that stuff up now, and it's reaching the point where we'll start to answer any detailed questions you have and lay out where we're going. So a couple of things have changed since the last time we talked to you. First is we actually did get approval from the state for, on behalf of all of public power. I've got to be careful how I frame this. for $8 million in AMI funding to be allocated across public power. We're negotiating with the other utilities that have interest in this right now, and the Department of Public Service is going to be managing that money. So we don't yet know exactly how much of the 8 million we will get, but we're pretty confident it's going to be a minimum of 4 million and could be as high as 6 million. So Ken will go through some numbers with you that actually reflect, we've assumed the 4 million, so the low end of that grant coming to VEPSA and then being allocated to the member utilities. So you get a fair amount of money there. The other piece is the financing component. We've elected to go with a loan through Community Bank. We're finalizing that right now as well, but it's a 10-year term loan. We're anticipating VEPSA as an organization borrowing $4 million and then making that available to any of the utilities that want to use it. We'll need that anyway for working capital because the state grant is a reimbursable. So we're going to have to pay the vendor first and then get reimbursed. So that will be there. I know one of the questions you were wrestling with is whether to fund this yourself or borrow the money through VEPSA, if that was an alternative. So we have that piece coming together as well, and that will be available. So I'll stop there and turn it over to Ken Sanamore, and he can kind of walk you through where we are in the specifics of the project.
Ken, just let you know, I put this in their packets. They would have this.
Okay. Yeah. Essentially, as you recall, the last time we spoke, the AMI is essentially a large network that's going to cover Enosburg Falls service territory. We cover that with what Aclara calls DCUs, data collection units, that act as essentially routers that route readings from each of the meters that is connected to with a 400 megahertz signal and relays it back through either a data network on a cellular network, or we could use fiber if and when Velco builds out into the territory here. Or we could use Consolidated Communications or Comcast, any of the number of providers that are providing internet access out around your territory. So then those readings will get relayed back to a set of servers on a Microsoft server or Microsoft Azure platform. Essentially, what you hear about as far as cloud services. That's where the Aclara will be hosting these servers on our behalf. We'll be working with them with them, and VEPSA staff will have access to that data, as well as, of course, Enosburg staff for billing and for other studies and anything like that. So essentially, this is a wireless network spread out throughout your service territory. As Ken mentioned, we're working towards the filing for with the PUC. Part of that is the executive summaries of the cost-benefit analysis that Lemmerhurt Consulting prepared on all of our behalf. And we did show you that last time. An executive summary, and also you can get back to the detailed analysis of exactly how that cost benefit was derived. So the other thing is that since time has gone by, we have updated the costs. And I just want to double check that to make sure we're using the same estimates. But essentially, Enosburg's total cost is $800,116 estimated at this time. Those are the latest numbers that we have. Those are made up of $511,345 of Aclara costs. That's for all of the equipment, all the meters, all of the electric meters, I should specify. as well as your share of the cloud infrastructure that we'll be using. One of the things that Aclara afforded us was the ability to share those hardware and software costs amongst all of the VEPSA utilities. So there is some savings as opposed to having a standalone server here in Enosburg to run that software. So 511 for that. Meter installation costs, we've got down as 87,640. That's if you have to hire a contractor to come in and install the meters. If we use internal folks for that, then essentially it can be viewed as a soft cost, is what, that lost opportunity cost of the linemen installing meters rather than doing what they normally would be doing. CIS vendor costs. In order to make this work from what we call meter to cash, to where you get the readings, you send the bill to the customer, and you get the cash back in, we're looking at $20,000 to work with Spectrum, the CIS vendor here, to do those conversions. Empower vendor cost of $12,000, that's to put up all the mapping and enable us to do things like transformer analyses, voltage analyses, and essentially programs to reduce losses on the system and make everything run much more efficiently. One of the many benefits that we can see out of the AMI system initially. Then we've got a few other small ones, 5,000 for service entrance update, 1,500. Water meter replacement. Lori received some time ago a water meter estimate from, I believe, Thai Sales. Is that who she went with? And that's around 86,000 to replace the water meters. And then VEPSA management and support, 38,500. That's mainly to support our staff, but also the support dollars for the consultants that we're going to have to hire in order to complete this for everyone. We just don't have the manpower in each of the municipals or on the VEPSA staff to do that. So we've already talked about Jackie Lemmerhurt and Lemmerhurt Consulting. We've got a proposal from her to do mainly the CIS integration assistance, as well as setting up the programming of the meters and how we want that done. So she's kind of our subject area expert that we're leaning on for those types of decisions. And then we still have a fairly large contingency in here of 38,000. That'll go down as we get more and more details of the project worked out and we get into the execution of the contract. So that totaling is 811,000. As Ken mentioned earlier, the share of the anticipated grants using roughly 38% of the total cost for each municipal. It will represent 38% of the total cost. So in Enosburg's case, that's 306,132. And I want to check your number on that to make sure it's the same that I'm presenting here, 306. Okay, good. Because I just found a version that was not that.
Mine says
Mine says
Mine says
453.
Okay. Yeah, so you've got, there's two separate ones using two different estimates. If we could just pencil in there, it's $306,132.
Is it 306,132?
Yeah, 132 anticipated grants using the 38%. So there were a number of different allocation methods we were testing, and we're going to go with the 38% across the board. And that leaves the total cost for year one, essentially your investment up front of $493,984 or $494,000.
So that I'm showing at 346, that's not correct.
Right. Taking the total year one project cost of 800,
different.
netting out the 306, it's 493, 948.
So just, I have a kind of question that's probably not relevant, but this preliminary number about the anticipated grants, how come that's so much higher than the edited rate?
Right, what changed so much?
It was a couple different estimates, and I mistakenly put the wrong one in.
Okay.
So the actual number is.
Could have been for a different
6,000.
municipality or something.
Yeah, so it's 306, 132 on
I like the
anticipated
first one
grants. Which is, yes, yeah, I know. Which is 38% of the 800,116 figure that you see for total year one costs.
And so you were saying that the way that VEPS is gonna do it is get a loan for 4 million because you need to pay for the equipment in order to get reimbursed from the state, right? Are you gonna use that 4 million to do loans to members to cover this upfront expense?
I'm not sure all the details have been decided. I may punt this one over to Ken Nolan, but.
I can step in here. Two points I want to make. First is that the number Ken gave you for the grant is based on us getting $4 million from the state. We're still pressing to increase that number. Expecting the Department of Public Service to actually issue an RFP for projects here within the next month, and we should get a better handle at that point. On the loan question, it's really going to be up to each individual utility. So some members have told us they have money stashed that they've collected over the last few years, and they would probably pay out of their fund balance for their project specifically. Others have good relationship with the local bank and say they'd probably prefer to go that route. They think they can do better interest rate than what we can. But we're making that money available if Enosburg, for example, decides that you don't want to use your local bank, you don't have cash available, we will step in with funding to make sure that you're covered, and essentially turn that first year cost into a monthly charge over 10 years is what would happen.
And would that be on the total amount, or can we just ballpark it? And so let's just say we're going to be getting 4 million worth of grants. Can we just mirror that number for, I guess, our portion of the VEPSA funding? Or would you be able to cover the entire 493?
Not sure I understand the question, but we'd be prepared to cover the full amount if that's what you'd like us to do.
That was my question.
There was a multi-year expense with this, correct?
Yes. Ongoing, it's $3.96 per meter per year. So year two, it's 16,751. Year three, same amount. And in year four, it starts escalating by a maximum of 3%. So we mirrored that number, and I do have these numbers here.
We can send that to you as well. Ken send it to us in a spreadsheet with what the next 15-year projection annual cost is going to be.
So relatively low maintenance costs after year one.
Yes.
What's the lifespan of these things?
15 years is what we're projecting. So it is a little bit different than the, meters that you've had in the field for many, many years. But the benefit is much more accuracy with the electronic metering versus the mechanical metering that you're using now.
Do you happen to have a projected payback?
Yes, that's all in the cost benefit analysis and the
Look at the
executive
last
summary.
The graph. No, that's a different thing that we didn't give to you, but I just printed out just in case. We can also send you guys that as well.
So 6 years.
I think 5 to 6 years was the initial projection. Yep. I know it's a lot up front to look at, but with the way legislature is going and a lot of the, you know, talk of tariffs for EV rates, electric vehicle rates and different things, we have the opportunity now to move forward with this when there is that portion of that 4 million potentially available. If we hold off until the state says you absolutely have to do this, that 4 million may not be an option. So I know it's not as much as we would like it to be to kick in towards this project cost, and it's a lot to take in and look at, but long term, if we're gonna do it, now's the time for us to move forward with it. I know it's a big capital cost, and I do understand and appreciate that, but I think it would benefit us greatly in the long run.
And the other thing too is just like anything else in the world right now is materials. So we're trying to get in front of this, getting these meters. You know, we're hearing 45 weeks out, even if we order them today. So
If you loan us the 493,000 and change for 10 years, what kind of rate? What kind of interest rate?
Yeah, well, the arrangement we have with Community Bank is it's a 10-year treasury plus 1.75%. So right now it's a little under 5% interest. And that locks in, it'll be fixed once we borrow the money. We don't have enough members signed up at this point to actually sign the loan agreement. But once we get everyone going in approvals, then we can sign the loan agreement and it becomes a fixed rate, whatever the treasuries are, plus 1.75 at that particular date.
Do you think we can get it cheaper globally?
I don't know, but I can take the next week or two to answer that question and make some calls to the banks.
Be good to have the answer.
Yeah. I definitely think this whole project is a good idea. I just want to try to keep our costs down because, as we know, the electric department isn't faring so well right now. So this is all these grants are state grants, correct?
The funding we were able to get was out of the state general fund appropriation. So the legislature allocated the $8 million to the Department of Public Service of general fund revenue. So it can be used for anything. The Department of Public Service now is going to be responsible for issuing the grant and tracking it. So we're trying to work with them to figure out what that looks like.
Is there any federal funding sources?
There may be. We tried to look through the ARPA funds. Those are really limited on what they can be used for, and they're tied really to low income communities. And it gets very difficult when you're doing like a system-wide project like this to be able to show that you're only benefiting low income individuals. So that's been a challenge. They call the IIJA funds we're looking at now, but we're being told that those funds, I hate to say it, but as far as the federal government is concerned with those funds, AMI is not really a cutting edge technology anymore. So it's very difficult to qualify for that. We haven't seen this latest bill that just got passed for climate change seems to be like that might be another avenue we can go toward. That's much more around resiliency, and these meters will give you more support with outage coverage and make the system more efficient. So we might have an avenue there, but it's not defined well enough yet to say. We're still working with our consultants to figure out, where the pots of money may be that we can tap into there.
And some of that new bill that was just passed we may be able to offset. Again, it's not fully clear on everything yet, but some of these other projects that we're looking into may be able to offset some of the other costs that may come through grants that may come out of that bill as well, or funding.
Yeah, I want to be crystal clear though. I mean, we will work with John and Abby to minimize the cost as much as we can. If that's you borrowing the money or you having us do it, I mean, whatever works the best for Enosburg, we'll structure it to minimize the cost where we can, and we'll get as much of that state grant money as we possibly can. Originally, we asked for 50%. And we're still hopeful that we might get there. The problem we ran into is when we originally went in for the 8 million, it was 11 million we asked the state for, and they could only allocate 8. And then Vermont Electric Co-op, who originally didn't want any of the grant money, now has come in and said they want 2.5 million. So we're in a bit of a debate with them over who should have first access here. And so I'm hopeful we'll get more, but we wanted to present numbers to you that were realistic and that we didn't come back and say, well, we overestimated the grant and now your share is higher. Want to under promise, over deliver if we can.
So what do you need from us? You just need a green light from our board to continue with this project?
Yeah, I think the key at this point is to say you're interested and you want to have John and Abby work with us to try to finalize the agreements and loans and everything like that to get us moving. I know John's been anxious to try to move you guys up the time frame. Originally, we were considering Enosburg like in year 2 or 3. It seems like if you're ready to have that conversation, we can move you into earlier parts of the deployment here, start to get equipment ordered and so on this fall, so that we're looking at deploying next year, summer, fall timeframe next year.
That's part of it as well, is getting some of the equipment ordered, which I'm being told can be canceled if something in the world happens, but
Which, with every day that goes by, could just be more expensive.
right, that's why we were also, if we get the finalized okay, then we can start ordering some of the stuff, should the pay timeframes be, you know, there's no harm, no foul. If something happens, we can say never mind.
It's like Amazon, we do it.
Yeah.
Can we afford this?
It's either way you look at it, whether it's a monthly payment with BEPSA or a bond with Vermont Bond Bank. I mean, it's going to be another monthly payment, but it's starting to turn around with the light department. Slowly but surely, we are getting there. Without knowing the initial, figures off the top of my head, I'm going to say yeah, we'll be able to comfortably afford another monthly payment.
Rough math, it's gonna be like around 5,000 a month.
Yeah, and we just paid off one of the trucks. So it'll offset. There's other ways that we can kind of look at our overall budget to compensate for this, so. It's a necessity. I definitely think it's in our best interest to move forward with this.
And all the presentations show that it's helpful for customers and stuff too, and already said.
Well, that's
The money
certainly-
might not, the financial support might not be here. Wait.
And the customer service side, I mean, some of the questions that we're getting asked, we'll be able to, from our desk, either myself or Lori or Psyche or John, if he happens to answer the phone, we can access a lot of the data kind of in real time and get a better handle on, well, why did my bill double this month? And then we can help, rather than playing well, did you do this? There's other things. It'll help us on the customer service side as well with explaining our bills to our customers a little bit better.
I think it'll be a good thing for sure, all the way around.
I think we're gonna be here eventually, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's
We're gonna
coming
be here
anyway, so
whether we
it's
want to
coming.
be, so we might as well.
it's
kind
like
of-
Christmas, we might as well wrap it up.
There's a boat going by with money in it, so might as well jump on.
Yep.
You need a formal motion or just that we're interested?
I think if we got a straw poll of the board that you're interested, we can work with John and Abby to take the next step. And then bring a final contract for you to look at.
That sounds good. We all agree?
Agreed.
Yes.
Perfect.
Interested.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, we think. We hope.
We ready to talk wind power?
When?
Wind.
Yeah, we're full
Out
out
in
here.
Vermont. Out in Vermont.
Pretty calm today.
I thought we were talking transmission costs.
Well, it all ties
It
together.
all ties
Sam.
together. It's all gonna come together.
Yeah.
So what do we got?
So I'll let Sean get into the details here, but the next item, we're looking for across all the members. There was some contracts that VEPSA signed on behalf of members that everybody kind of took a chunk of that are ending this year. So we've been spending the last 8 or 9 months looking at alternatives and trying to figure out what the portfolio looks like going forward. John's been very active in talking with us about storage and solar and how this all fits together. But we've reached a point where we have a recommendation for what to do for 2023, what the replacement purchase should look like and how that affects your budget and so on. And we ended up, surprisingly enough, looking at a wind project in upstate New York as the best alternative for fitting with what we feel we need and the pricing we're looking at. So I'll stop there before I get over my skis and let Sean pick up and go through the details with you.
Good evening, everybody. So yeah, about 25% of your power supply has been coming from the Seabrook Nuclear Station in Seabrook, New Hampshire for the past 4.5 years. And as Ken alluded to, that contract is coming to an end this December. We've already replaced 2/3 of it. A couple of years ago, we went through a similar process that we're just trying to complete now. And we decided to purchase hydro energy plus renewable energy credits. So we've already got about 2/3 of this contract replaced. What we're attempting to do now is replace the remaining 1/3. And as Ken said, the contract and the project that we're looking at now is in Steuben County, New York, so central New York. And it would be imported to New England at the same location that the New York Power Authority energy is delivered to us. So we're very familiar with that location and feel very good about the company who's facilitating and scheduling that transfer. Their name is Tenaska Energy Marketing. We just traded financials with them last week and reviewed them, and they are remarkably fiscally strong, which is important. You want a strong and creditworthy company behind your long-term contracts, and they fit that category in spades. So the proposal is to buy 5 years of this wind project, import it to New England. One vocabulary word I'd like you to be able to hang on to this evening is diversity. We've never had at VEPSA, nor you as Enosburg Falls, had a wind project in your power supply before. Adding diversity to your hydro, to your run-of-river hydro, and to the landfill and contracts makes a lot of sense. So that's both from a physical perspective and from a financial one. We get diversity of supply through location, and this provides both kind of aspects of it. Are ultimately looking to do 10 years with this counterparty, but we'd like to just do the first 5 this fall, get some operating experience with it first through this winter and spring and early next summer, and ideally come back to you within the year to consider extending it 5 more years. That's important. Current Vermont law is geared to 2032. That's when our renewable energy requirements reach their peak. And this could be a nice, I wouldn't call it a cornerstone, but it's one piece of the puzzle that would help us reach that goal. And with that in mind, I'll make one last point and kind of pause for questions. The contract would import energy primarily at about $80 a megawatt hour in the first year, but it also comes with Massachusetts Class 1 renewable energy credits. Those are really valuable. Now, we don't need them in Vermont. They don't qualify under Vermont statute. But what we would do is sell them to a Massachusetts utility. And right now you can think $30 a megawatt hour is what that would be worth. So $80 headline cost in year one, subtract 30 for the value of the RECs. Now you're down to 50. And then we're going to buy back the renewable energy credit we do need, which is called Vermont Tier 1. That costs about $10. So net, I'm expecting this to cost you in year one about $60 a megawatt hour, which is, 40% less than current market prices. It's a very attractive price. I could give you more context, but I think I'd rather get some guidance from you about what you're curious about, concerned about, and we'll let that guide the discussion.
So who would be buying and selling all of these credits? Would it be VEPSA?
Yes.
And who would be keeping the dividends?
We pass everything through back to the utilities that hold the contract. So in this case, Enosburg Falls.
I assume you're getting away from the nuclear because they don't consider it renewable.
Under current statute, that's exactly the rub. There was absolutely nothing wrong with that power from any other perspective.
Exactly.
And then the only benefit of buying renewable energy from out of state is, like you said, the transfer of credits or the exchange of credits.
You can buy wind in New England, but it's more difficult to find because it's mostly contracted. So this was a function of good timing. This contract that the project was on was to NYSERDA, which is a state-run energy agency in New York. And that agreement ended, and they were seeking a new agreement. So we're looking to step into a contract with VEPSA and its utilities to, contract for it. Does that answer your question? Maybe.
Close enough, yeah. Because I know you had said something about needing Vermont renewable energy credits, and I just didn't know why we didn't just purchase renewable energy that came from Vermont.
There's not enough here. I don't think.
Yeah, in short, there's not enough of it. It would be hard to find enough renewables in state at this point.
Yeah, to be clear though, we looked at, what was it, Sean, 6 or 7 different options. And one of those did include power energy plus the Vermont qualifying RECs. But because it's in New England and we are mostly interested in winter power, the price to make that purchase was much higher than what we got from the wind project in New York. So it's more administrative headache to have to do the arbitrage, as they call it, selling off the Massachusetts, buying back the Vermont. It's a little bit more challenging to get the power in from New York. But when you compare the price that we get at the end of the day versus what the other alternatives were if we bought from power in New England, just given the way the markets are structured, we were looking at, paying 30 or 40% more to get power that was comparable and had the assets directly that we were looking for. So this seems like the best compromise to us. Gets most of your risk, especially in winter, when pricing right now is extremely high. Gets most of that risk covered. At the end of the day, we end up with the Vermont Tier 1 RECs for a reasonable price, and we manage these transactions every day, so it's nothing out of the ordinary for us to handle.
You mentioned more than once it's $80 a megawatt hour for the first year. What is it thereafter?
It goes up by a fixed inflation percentage, so 3% a year. So it's a fixed price, but it's stepping up at a fixed rate. It'd be roughly $90 a megawatt hour in year 5.
It's a 5-year contract, right?
Yeah.
Initially.
Initially, they're looking to go 10, but for the starters, we'd be agreeing to a 5-year contract. And even at the $90 at the end, that's way.
How does that work? They don't actually run lines from that wind power station to Vermont, do they?
Yeah, there's a series of high voltage transmission lines that connect New York's control area as a state to New England as a region. So there is no single transmission line.
First, you're not actually getting that power, you're just paying somebody some money for something.
Well, in this case, it's physically, literally true. They're scheduling that electricity to physically move. You're right in general. That's the way electricity works. It goes where it needs to go, and we make these financial transactions to trade it. But in the case of interregion flows of electricity, this will physically be delivered to New England. And I chose the word New England rather deliberately. You know, there's only 1 or 2 interconnections to Vermont, one at the north part of the state, one at the south. There's 3 others further south in the region. So it's kind of split across this composite of 5 transmission lines that New York and New England jointly manage for this purpose.
So the other reason why we thought about 5 years, Abby and I, just because Sean and Ken, they're super smart and we fully trust them, but we're still trying to figure out the whole credits and the whole, so as we learn
Fits with us.
and looks at our other projects, you know, we may be back here saying, yep, let's go the other 5 years, but we're hoping
Maybe not.
there might be another answer. We'll see, but.
Even in the short term, it sounds like an immediate savings.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's a good bet that you'll save money in either one for sure. And if I may, we have a current contract that's very much the same in a lot of respects. It's called the Fitchburg Landfill. It's in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. The methane that's produced gets run through an engine that produces electricity. We have a long-term contract to that, of which Enosburg's a part. We take both energy and RECs. And we're proposing to do the same thing with this Howard Wind project that we already do with Fitchburg, which is to sell those RECs to those Massachusetts utilities that need them. We keep the money on your behalf, buy back what's needed for Vermont, and use the rest to lower your energy cost in that contract. So this is, operationally something we've been doing for years.
Yeah, the 5-year contract in particular, Sean mentioned it gives us some operational experience with this particular project. I think it would give your staff some ability to get comfortable with how things work. From a permitting standpoint also, if you go beyond 5 years, then there are some state permits required that are not needed if you're less than 5 years. So we tend to default for the shorter term because it saves on permitting costs as well, in addition to all the other benefits of going that route.
I know it's coming.
right. Okay, so
Can't stand still forever.
again, would Enosburg Electric individually be entering into a contract with this, or is this something that VEPSA would be doing on our behalf?
Yeah, VEPSA would hold the contract with Tenaska Energy Marketing, and then what we would do is give you I call it a sub-allocation agreement. You'll get a percentage of the whole that VEPSA contracts for. So your contract will legally be with VEPSA.
Yeah, it's a
But
back-to-back arrangement. Oh, I'm sorry, Abby.
No, you explained it, it's how where's that operate at this point.
Okay, so I guess we just wait for a contract?
Well, we're going through approvals with our 11 members. If Enosburg is a part of that, yes, we'll be finishing up the approvals by the end of September, maybe a little sooner, and we'll execute with Tenaska and send you a contract in the subsequent month. So yeah, the October.
Yeah, so there's a letter. Sean's already sent John and Abby a letter agreement, basically asking them to sign and indicate agreement that you want to move forward. So that would be the next step. If you're comfortable going forward with the contract, we just ask you to sign, which gives us some comfort of who's going to be in and who's going to be out. And when we start finalizing the allocations, and then that would, as Sean said, that will be followed up once we get the final amounts all nailed down and the agreements in place, then we'd have a follow-up contract for you to deal with.
Do we want to make a motion allowing John to sign the
letter of intent.
yeah, the letter of intent on our behalf?
Move with-
Second.
Sandy with the first, Eli had the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right,
Thank you very much.
that takes care of that. And what about transmission costs?
We haven't called them out, we'll work on that.
Gotta get those down.
Yeah, they're going in the opposite direction. We're doing everything we can to try to do with battery storage and other ways to reduce the costs, but that's not looking good. Even out of the federal government, we're seeing more and more efforts to try to give incentives to build more transmission, which is going to drive the costs up.
Why the sudden increase?
There, I don't know about a sudden increase necessarily. I think actually we just got the rates for this year and they're down a couple of dollars from ISO New England. But there's a lot of construction going on related to renewable development. And we're looking, if you look at a pipeline for the next 5 years, the transmission companies have been, say the past 5 years, they've been investing in like rehabbing old lines that were built in the 1950s and 60s. So you've seen a lot of expenditures on replacing poles, replacing wires and things of that nature. You look for the next 5 years, they're transitioning toward building fairly significant transmission lines for bringing in more renewables. Offshore wind, for example, is going to start to show up on the transmission grid. So the amount of actual physical equipment on the systems being expanded substantially, billions of dollars, and that gets translated directly into the rates. The only way you can avoid that is to make sure that your particular utility is not around, is not using load at the time New England as a whole is setting its peak usage. So that's why things like battery storage, working with industrial customers for demand response, things like that are becoming much more important.
This would definitely tie back into the AMI because you can see when peak demand is, and you can adjust as a customer. You can adjust your load.
And you can, as a utility, you can start to see which customers actually are worth working with. As you get a feel for like who's on at that peak hour, then you can start to discuss with them how they can change their operation or what you can do to help them. So absolutely right, it ties back.
Good stuff. All right, is that all we had tonight?
That was it for tonight with them.
That's it for
I figured
us.
that was enough.
Can't leave.
That was all I Well, thank you very much for all your help.
Brain's gonna explode.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Ken and Ted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, Sean.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
I mean, we could always throw more, but we figured
Yeah.
that was enough to overload
Baby
just for
steps.
one day.
Yeah, a little bit at a time.
All right, up next we have Historical Society discussion with AOT regarding Railroad Museum.
So we have Mark Fitzgerald is on the line from AOT to jump in whenever we need him for any of those questions. We have Cindy here, Shirley, and Ginny. I thought that was who it was, who are here as representatives from the Historical Society. I know they had a meeting last night, kind of starting to discuss the direction that the Historical Society wants to go. So I don't know how you guys want to start the conversation. Do we want to give them a chance to update where their thinking is, or where do you want to jump in at this point in time? I know we've been talking about this for quite a while now.
Yeah, I guess if you guys want to give us just an update, because I don't think we've spoken historical.
Hi, everybody. I'm with this report online from home
Hi, Ward.
Hi, Ward.
Hey, Ken.
at the historical meeting, society meeting last night. So I want to see how this goes.
All right, so as I understand, Historical Society had a meeting recently.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Well, before we go there were a couple things the last time I was at a meeting. There was gonna be a meeting with the historical people about what was okay for an egress and maybe about the cost to start putting some price tags on these things. So I don't know, Abby, you were gonna organize that, did
Based off
that?
of our last conversation of not knowing where the direction of the Historical Society was taking, we haven't scheduled that meeting yet, so we kind of have a better understanding of where everyone is at. 'Cause yes, the game plan is to see if we can get somebody here to physically do a walkthrough with somebody from the board, probably myself. I'll probably drag Jesse along with the zoning because he's got a good understanding of everything.
Right, we discussed that at the last meeting, so I thought we would do it,
And then
have
you
more
went-
info.
Not
before.
regarding that, no, because we had you and I had a conversation and didn't know what the direction that the Historical Society was taking. You had sent me the minutes, nothing had kind of progressed at that point, so we were holding off to kind of bring AOT in and have this conversation, see what direction the Historical Society is going with stuff, and then when we have that direction, we'll bring everybody in.
Well, we were certainly looking for some more guidance around that, and I think that was like a month ago that we met at the fire station. I think it was a joint meeting. So anyways, I was kind of waiting on hearing if we were gonna set that up. The other thing that was happening is the town and village and AOT, we talked about getting the town on the deed because they would be more amenable to, letting us have an appropriation and whatever. And I connected the three people and the lawyers were talking, and I know the village acted on that, but I'm not sure that the town acted on that. So that's also been a little bit of a stall, so we can't really ask for some support from the town that we had hoped to do also.
So that fall, we gave our attorney kind of permission to reach
Right.
out. I think they were waiting to hear back from the town's attorney at this point in time, and I think the town is kind of waiting to see after the fire marshal report, the progress, what the game plan was. They're kind of, I don't want to say put the brakes on, but they've slowed down and kind of want to see what the game plan is moving forward. And Jesse, please jump in if I misspeak, but I think they're just looking to see that there's a better plan put together with the Historical Society and moving forward before they really fully commit to, and I think they're just waiting, their attorney is backed up, so it's kind of at that point as well.
Yeah, Abby, that's right. The town is, we're kind of stepping back and you hit the nail on the head. We don't want to get into another situation of, a bunch of repairs, a bunch of fixing, a bunch of, we want to kind of see what we get, before we dive head first. So you definitely, that's definitely the sentiment that we're taking, so.
Who's talking?
Jesse,
Jesse.
the
Jesse
zoning
Woods.
administrator from the town, for the town and the village.
Okay. So we have had meetings, and, one of the pieces is the egress, how much that's gonna cost to add to the list that we already have going. I guess we have a fuel tank donation from Sam that would help with some of the costs, but this society has become hesitant about putting in $60,000 plus maybe 70 because we don't own the building. So that has become a growing concern. Now, we did start out several years ago.
Can you mute?
Is it me?
Jesse.
No, he's.
Yeah, whoever that was. So
Oops, I
Sandy, you
forgot.
made an interesting comment. So you're hesitant on putting any money into the building that you don't own. Would you like to own it?
I think that the fact,
Knew you were going there.
at this point, it's almost too much. That's what the society is feeling, and there is increasing trepidation about spending every single cent we have, our maintenance fund, our checking account. There's another grant that I was going to apply for if I get the green light from the society. And the additional repairs and the unknown about the egress. So we have a spreadsheet and we're trying to track what it would cost and, what we can do. And like I said, I was going to apply for this grant, and we were hoping the town would get on the deed so we could ask for a little bit there and make it all work. But there's increasing concern by society members about investing all that into a building that they don't own. That's been the sentiment for the last 2 meetings.
How long have you had all that money in your maintenance fund?
I'm not sure what the maintenance fund started with, because I'm sort of new as president, but I know we put 9 in the cabin. We have 17 and change left in the maintenance fund. And that's sitting there and it has to be for maintenance. And then we raised in the little capital campaign that we had going 23.5. So, you know, that's a good piece of change. We have money in the checking account, but of course we can't liquidate the whole account. And then I was going for a $20,000 matching grant with the historic people. They've been working with me, telling me where we need to go. They didn't want to put a shingle roof on. I think I mentioned that before. Now they're okay with the standing seam. I have 2 quotes on the standing seam and was moving forward. And then when the extra fire marshal costs came in, people started to do this.
I
So
think in the
we
fire-
had quite a bit of money. We were going in that direction. And there, until there was a little hesitation. Abby, sorry.
No, go ahead, Abby,
Well,
guys.
Sam asked you how long it had been in that account, not how much was in the account.
I can't answer that. It's been, because I don't know. Does anybody know?
I think it's approximately 15 years. It's when one member passed away.
It was-
And it was
right.
significantly set for maintenance of the building.
It was when Pat Stanley died, and I don't know when that was. I don't have those kind of
10 years
records.
ago.
About 10, okay, so I would say about, other people will say anyways about 10. I don't have that, can't answer it.
And I don't think the fire marshal report added, I mean, the roof, it sounds like it's been known that the roof needs to be replaced for the few years. The bigger things that the fire marshal report added was the railing that's outside is not up to code and it's honestly detached from a lot of that. So that needs to be basically reattached and brought up to code for ADA compliance, and then a second egress in the building or a sprinkler system. Those are the
So
two.
one over the other,
Yeah.
another door
If
or a
there's
sprinkler.
if there's an egress, a second egress, then there's not a need for a sprinkler system. But if you don't wanna go or can't go with a second egress, which it is gonna be very limited with that building, a sprinkler system was the alternative to that. So those are the 2 big things. I mean, the fire marshal's report, I know we've all looked at it, was a lot of smaller stuff overall. And then it did make mention of the roof and then just the railing and the egress.
Do you have rough quotes for what a second egress might cost?
No, that was what I was bringing up at the beginning, that I thought there was gonna be a discussion with historic people after the last meeting. I know you and Abby were mentioned, and I would assume that I or somebody would go. So I kind of waiting on that to happen. So we haven't gone out separately and talked to the historic people about this. We don't know.
I
what
think
that's
it might
gonna
be a good
cost.
idea just to try to get some clarity here. That way, if
Exactly.
you're coming asking for funding sources, that way we know as the people funding would know
Agreed.
exactly what you need.
That's what we were
So
hoping to
just
do.
a thought that popped into my head was you as the Historical Society, you're responsible for maintenance. So the roof is definitely a maintenance item. It's the largest item, I believe, but the second egress and the railing is a building thing. We own the building. What if we just made the building compliant and they can take care of all the maintenance stuff? That way we can get this settled, because we keep dragging it on, and I just.
Now, that includes the second egress,
Right,
or a sprinkler.
Or a
I presume
sprinkler,
the
which I
egress
would-
would probably be less
I would assume.
than a sprinkler.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why that second egress couldn't come out onto that side landing
That is
that's
gonna
up by the tracks?
that is going to require railings on the whole building to
Okay.
stay code ADA compliant, and I have a feeling we're gonna get told no with historic
With
side for
historical,
that.
yeah, so.
The thought was, when Jesse and I went and looked, and the back left corner that's closest to Bates,
Yeah,
there's kind of over the eaves, hang out quite a bit. There was talk there, we've got to kind of narrow down where the property line is in the back, but put a door in the back there with just literally like a ramp that runs parallel to the
Just
building.
enough to
That's
be
kind of
enough.
Just enough to get
Yeah.
out of the building if need be. That's what Jesse and I kind of kicked back and forth and brainstormed. It's just a matter of we need to sit down and look at does Bates own that? Is that fall into our, where's the property line there?
And Jesse was looking into that.
Yep, Jesse was starting to look into that. I'm not sure how, I know we went back and forth. Jesse, you'll have to refresh my memory.
Have
where
you figured it out yet?
Yeah. No, so one of the problems in the village is there's not a lot of maps. You know, there's not a lot of surveys, there's not a lot of boundary line adjustment subdivisions, so you don't have a lot of maps there. I have an old, I mean, for lack of a better term, almost like a cartoon drawing of that area there. Again, I mean, I'm sure it's in the deed somewhere, but again, we're not surveyors. So, you know, a lot of times it's in some of those village deeds are, you know, it's 25 feet off from, you know, somebody's property who has been gone for, you know, 50 years, you know, so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge of figuring where that boundary line is in that old parking lot.
Since the Agency of Transportation owns that land, I would assume that they would have a deed somewhere that they could maybe tell us where the boundary is.
Right, so yeah, go ahead, Mark, sorry.
We actually have valuation sheets. And if you go to our website, we can actually put the valuation sheet over the actual topography so that you can actually see where it crosses the parking lot. And I believe those are pretty up to date. Unless there's been a sell-off that we don't know about. But
that's something that anyone can access.
What's that?
Sorry. And that website is something that anyone can access?
Yes. Yep. If you go to Agency of Transportation Rail, you can click on it's a rail portal, and you can actually type in the address and it will pull it right up. And that portal will show the overlay of the actual ground, and it puts that actual val sheet right over the ground, so you can kind of tell where your buildings are and where your property boundary lines are as far as the railroad bed goes, or railroad property goes.
Maybe you have something to say?
I do have a description of the premises in the lease between the state of Vermont and the village of Enosburg Falls, and I have it here.
Okay, so that's for figuring out the second egress point?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's something that we can nail down in the future, or at least examine that in future. I guess right now I have a question for Historical Society. If the village did take up the financing for the second egress and the railing, would the Historical Society be willing to do the other maintenance items on that list?
I would like to speak. I'm a director with the Historical Society. My name is Shirley Dusso. And my question is that there is a problem here. I have done a fair amount of research. I've gone through the original sale to the state, which was made in 1994. When you go to the lease, it was made in 1995.
I have all that if you guys want.
Yeah, and then after that, my question is that it's a lease and it talks about maintenance, and there's a huge problem because of the money involved. And not only have we mentioned that, but there's also, as I understand it, because they're historical, it's the woodwork under the eaves that's going to cost a fair amount of money too. So if you take that and go back, who is really responsible? Because the word maintenance, does that really mean a roof? I question it. And I think, I'm not here to be confrontational. I think it's good if we can work something out between the two groups, the village and the Historical Society, to come to a reasonable discussion and reasonable understanding.
And it says improvements. Maintenance is not the term that's in the lease.
Well, improvement is something that you do need to do to your roof as time goes on. Then I
Whatever
had
the
to
wording
improve
is.
mine.
But no, to answer your question, who is ultimately responsible for it? we don't know. And
No.
that's why this has been such a ordeal, because
Exactly.
the village's stance is, it's not the Village of Enosburg Falls Historical Society.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a
It's
town
just right,
thing. Well, it's not a town thing, but it's a community town thing.
right.
And the village really has nothing to do with that building, and I don't know why we're on that lease. I don't know if we're a middleman between the state and it had to be gifted to a municipality, in which case it was leased to the Historical Society. As far as I know, I don't think the village has anything to do with that building ever.
You
Well,
you
no.
own the building.
Yes.
Right,
You own the building
we
back.
bought it for $1 from the
Right.
state back whenever, and I think it was just.
But
I
it
don't know what-
says, and that's what I don't understand either, said structure is a part of the land and premises conveyed to the state. In recognition of the phrase house's historical significance, this deed is subject to the following conditions. Grantee will enter into and maintain in full force and effect a ground lease with grantor. Fine. Grantor will not construct any additions to the existing building. And then it goes on and tells all the things that you're responsible for.
Which you
Which-
put in the lease to us,
Yeah.
Right,
just to clarify, that's how it went. None of us had anything to do with it, none of us here.
yeah, absolutely none of us, this was years and years ago.
Single person.
So,
Let's face
and
it.
this was an agreement that seemed to have worked for the last, 40 years or however long it's been? And
Yeah.
And it's only an issue now because the building hasn't been maintained. And there's such a big
Exactly.
amount of money that needs to be put there.
Yep.
But again, I think it's the village's position that why should we have to cough up all this money for a building that we don't use? We only own legally, probably as a middleman to some deal that had to happen, decades ago. So this
Well,
is.
I think it is incumbent on the village in a way, because there are historical artifacts there from everyone in the village. I mean, it represents sort of the history of Enosburg Falls.
What about the town?
And the town,
And the town.
and the town.
And
And
the
that's
town.
why we started this thing with V-Trans, the village and the town, to get everybody together, to work together, to support. We haven't had for 40 years, any support for the building. So
Right.
now it's a,
Right, and we can sit here and point
expense.
fingers at each other all day. We gotta make something happen in the long run.
yeah,
So
exactly.
let's just say we got that building up to snuff. The town would definitely be more apt to take on their name on the deed. And so if we can sit here and hash this out between the people who lease it and the people who own it to get the building up to shape and then establish a plan moving forward, I think that we could make some,
So that we
make
don't
some
end up in
progress.
the same place again.
I think
agree,
we do
exactly.
an MOU essentially moving forward, let's these that come up now and then put it in writing what the game plan is for the future, for the remainder of this lease and then.
Right, you just
2025.
renewed, correct?
Not that I know of.
2025, it will be up for renewal again, it's every
Okay.
10 years.
So that'll be a pretty good transition then. We're in almost 2023 here at this point. So let's get something geared up for next year to get that building up to snuff, and then we'll get the town on the deed, and we'll go forward from there. So as far as the plan goes, what happens next?
Can I just say something? So I guess I look at it two ways. Because we do have, so the reason why it's a hot topic is because we had the fire marshal called, and now we're the insurers and we own the building. So now we're responsible for it. So that's kind of also why this whole ball got rolling. So as we have talked, the way I look at it, there's two possibilities here. If this, we can work with the Historic Society if you guys want to jump in and participate in getting it up. Because if it stays open, then it needs to be to code. I mean, the other option is to shut it down, make it aesthetically nice. Do we have to keep the building and have it, as bikers or whatever drive by, they see a nice building there, which obviously would be a lot less expensive if we went that route of just maintaining it to have it as a building that looks nice, that's historical. Maybe someday we win a bunch of money and we go back in and do whatever to it. But I guess that's kind of the way I've been thinking through this. So I guess I'd like to add that part of, if we go at it, there's gonna be participation and so forth to keep it open.
I'm fairly certain in our purchase agreement from the state, we give them the right of first refusal.
We do,
Is that correct?
correct.
because that thought has been in the back of my mind ever since we've had this issue is like I said, the village, I don't see us needing that building for anything ever. I think it went directly to somebody else. So what would happen with the state if the village wanted to sell that building?
So this, the state would have to decide, A, if they would allow the new buyer to own it. One of the things that the state always has to be sure of with state assets is that we collect fair market value. So I'm sure back in '94, when the village acquired the building, I think you're correct. There was probably some issue. You know, I think V-Trans usually does work with municipalities if they have a building within their, you know, town limits that they want to utilize and they want to do the maintenance and those kinds of things. V-Trans will sell a building for $1 as long as there's a lease for the land and that kind of thing. And then they do have the reversionary rights because they didn't collect fair market value when they sold it. They sold it for $1 because the municipality for some reason wanted the building. So that's probably how that got done. So if you were going to sell it, even adding the town on, V-Trans would most likely need to waive the reversionary right, add the town, and then those same reversionary rights would come into play if the town and the village combined wanted to sell it to, say, a private entity. So the reversionary rights are always going to come up if the title of the property is going to change hands. And then that would have to be approved by V-Trans.
Okay. How would you guess that would work for a nonprofit?
I think if you came to V-Trans with a plan, that would be the best way to go. Even if it's if it's a nonprofit, somebody's going to maintain the building and then be, you know, in a lease so that we understand what's going to happen with the land and the building. I think we just have to look at it and figure out if it would work. What we try to stay away from is private residencies, that kind of thing. Nonprofits are good. Municipalities are good. When you start going into the private sales where people might use it as a business or a residence, that's when V-Trans may want something different or may not allow it. But I think municipalities and nonprofits probably depends just on what the nonprofit is and what their use is going to be in the future.
I'd like to talk if I can for a minute.
Go ahead, Ward.
Yeah. I think we've had a good demonstration of two things tonight. The first is that we're not yet all in this together. And the second is that that Abby and Jesse have a lot more detail and understanding and the skills to provide that than those of us in the Historical Society. With those 2 points, I'd like to suggest that if some of us from the Historical Society were to work with Abby and Jesse, we get a detailed document of what's needed and maybe some alternative ways to go, and then come back and have something on paper that everybody can look at. The shortcoming of your solution, Sam, which is to share responsibility and pay, which I think is a great, the only way we could keep the Historical Society in it is if we do that, is that we don't know the amounts now. And if we did a more detailed plan, and it sounds to me like most of the information's around, personally, I'd be willing to help. I can type and do always have an opinion, but on what you do, how you add an egress and what that will cost, I'd not be any help at all. And I think none of us in the Historical Society have those skills. So I'd suggest that if you guys are willing and our leadership that's at the meeting tonight is willing, that we have a smaller group to meet and put something on paper, and I'm willing to play a role in making sure that a document comes back that we can talk through and decide. Thanks.
Thank you, Ward.
I certainly appreciate your offer to work on the egress. I think that's a step in the right direction. And I think
It was an idea. It wasn't an
well,
offer yet.
okay, the concept of doing that, I think will help the society feel like they're sort of not in it alone and overwhelmed. And I think I said to them last night, we're just about done, you know, the season opening there, and we've got all winter, and that we have to, you know, take the steps to figure this all out, break it down, decide, I mean, to move forward. Like I say, there's been some pullback, and everybody get on the same page and give it another, you know, shot, a little more discussion, and see what we can do together.
Yep.
We have raised money for this project, and we have, like, you know, we have quite a bit of money, 17 and 23. So, you know, we have quite a bit of money, and I was going to do the grant with, for the 20 matching, which is, you know, would hopefully get a roof and the eaves done. So we definitely don't have enough money at this point to make it all happen.
Right.
So that's all I'm throwing out. But
So-
we have 6 months of the winter. There's, you know, there's gonna be new people on the board and new leadership, and see what we can do, you know?
So at this point, I think for the ease of clarity, I would like the Historical Society to get in touch with the Historic Preservation and figure out exactly what is allowed, what's not allowed.
Sure.
And then from there on, have the Historical Society get in contact with the contractor and get a number for hopefully every project on that list. I know there's a lot of them, but something that's gonna need to get done.
It's
Or-
unbelievable because they won't call you back. I've called and called, people that have even come and visited, and they don't even call you back. It's really rough right now.
It's
This
gonna
winter it might
be,
slow
it's
up.
gonna be hard to get a contractor to call you back right now. I think
Yeah.
if you leave a message, you need to emphasize that
I have,
the work is for next year to start getting scheduling.
Yep.
I know my husband's a contractor and
Yep.
he cringes when his phone rings right now,
So-
but
yeah, no,
But
I
you
agree,
have
I
to be
agree.
making yourself known.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, it's me again, I'm still waiting.
yeah.
I would like the Historical
That's
Society
fine.
to nail down those details, but also have a conversation within yourselves to figure out exactly what
Yes.
you wanna do. Because if you guys are thinking about moving or
Yep.
disbanding or whatever it may be.
We're meeting in 2 weeks. Oh, you know, people wanted to see what was discussed here, and, you know, we have things to report.
On a good summer, you know, obviously, before COVID,
Yeah.
everything in the world is before COVID. How many visitors did you have at the freight station average in a summer?
Well, I've been on all through COVID. I don't have all the records back, but when I write grants, it's about 200 people that we put on the grant based on projections and what we can gather.
And
Without-
school kids, school children that have often come.
Yeah, but that's about what,
200 a year?
it's only open for 3.
Of course, that's only in the
it's
summer.
It's only open for 3
If,
months.
if it were heated or insulated, would you be open all year, or are you just a summer
I
organization?
never had that discussion. Some people have been on longer than I have.
Have you entertained hours during the week at all either? I know it's all volunteer based. We've had, the reason I asked that, and just in the last couple weeks alone, we've had people stop down here asking questions with Historical Society and wanting to go, but I think it's just Saturday hours right now.
Yes, and we have a hard time getting volunteers. That's what I've experienced. I've learned a lot since getting involved with this, trust me.
And unfortunately, 90% of the membership that attend the meetings, even those that don't attend the meetings but are interested and or pay dues, etc., are probably over 65.
There's a lot
The majority
over-
of the people
yeah.
are, I'd say at least in their 70s.
And a lot in their 80s,
Yeah, yes, and
yeah,
beyond.
and 90s, actually, Janice is
So-
90.
It's just, you know,
we aren't doing the baked bean dinners anymore like the Historical Society used to do, and we don't have the
Buy some
physical
children?
people. Yeah. People, but that next generation, I mean, aren't as involved as,
Interested.
or
They just
interested.
no, they are interested, they just haven't had the right invitation.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done to get the society where I think it could be and where, why I joined and took the responsibility, because I think it can be a lot more than it is, but it's been uphill.
I know you and I have had this conversation
Mhm.
multiple times, but in how you market
Yes.
yourself, and like Heather said, it sounds like there may be interest in kind of figuring out what that way is to market yourself, or what events can you, call up the EBA, call up the EI, that they're doing something, hey, can we piggyback, set up a table, set up this, or
I
do
did
something.
that, and they said
And,
no.
I'm just using it as an example,
Right,
but
you're
I'm
only
just,
open
there's
3
a-
months
there-
a year?
Pardon?
What 3 months are you open?
Dairy Day to Labor Day,
So
June to
ballparkish.
September.
opposite of school schedule.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
there goes
Yeah.
field trips.
But it's the manpower to do all of what is mentioned, and I've done a huge amount of work, and other people have done a huge amount of work, and we're just, we're,
Just holding on.
yeah, exactly, we're just holding on. So a lot has to be done, and hopefully the next people that are leaders can do
Any
it.
other societies that could offer
Yeah, there
any
are.
advice? No, I was just
Yes,
thinking
yes,
as to
there
how
are.
they attract
Yeah.
younger people,
Yeah. People have
talking
been
to-
to Sheldon, I've talked to St. Albans. St. Albans is having the same struggle, interestingly.
Okay, yeah.
Sheldon is kind of a new society, it's full of vim and
No
vigor.
room, sweep,
Yeah, a little, yeah. But there's a lot of work that has to be done, and I'm hoping that we can get some people to come to the plate and help do it, because it's not a 1 or 2 or 3 man show. And it's burning out the people that are putting in all the time.
I would definitely love to have some conversations, in terms of after-school programming, some of the after-school project director for the district, so.
Mhm. Yep.
Because
outside
until it's
trustee
really,
time.
really cold, you could be open for school trips and that sort of thing, right?
Absolutely.
Because you do have
And same thing in
kerosene.
the spring.
Yeah, yeah, there's
Same
a
in the
monitor.
spring as well.
The monitor, yep. Yeah, the possibilities are there, for
That's
sure.
right, end of school year before January Day, some end of the year trips or something.
Cook 'em some hot
After
dogs.
school.
It's been a
Throw some
fairly,
candy.
Yeah, throw candy.
Okay, so does it sound like we have an idea of kind of what we need going
I think
forward?
so, till the next time we visit, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got a meeting in a couple weeks.
Any questions, ladies?
Well, I guess I would just like to say that I think the Historical Society started in 1981. And so therefore, we're now in 2022. And those people who were there when it started up to 22, that's 41 years ago. And all of those people are still sitting around, and they're burned out. But I think they're also discouraged by the high amount of money that all of a sudden is needed. There's no doubt about that. That, to me, is
Frightening.
key, is frightening.
A lot of people
They
have
do not
gone.
want to close this, they certainly don't want to disband the Historical Society, under no conditions. I mean, they're attached to those artifacts, they're attached to what's there. We have people come back who want to visit old records, etc., when they're here in the summertime. That's a draw there.
You should charge for that.
Eh?
You should charge for that.
Well,
I mean, you can't go to the town clerk's office, right, and sit and look up records
no,
without paying a
but
fee.
many of those, I'll tell you, are lifetime members. And as with any association, when you have lifetime members, and there were many of them when it started, I mean, you don't have that money anymore, but yet you have people coming as members.
And those lifetime members, 30 and 40 years ago, paid $100 to be a lifetime member.
Yeah.
And that doesn't do a lot 40 years later when these people say, well, I'm already a lifetime member.
Yeah.
But that isn't carrying,
$100 back then
A
was
roof.
worth a lot more than it is now
Yes.
too.
Exactly. And so, you know, there are many things. I mean, on one of the grants that Cindy wrote, they wrote back and said, sorry, you can't apply for this grant because the building is owned by the municipality. Sorry, that's it.
Right, so I think like in moments like that, like that's like more of a conversation of like, could the
Right,
trustees
exactly.
apply for that?
Yes, and I think that's the whole thing, that the grant really has to come from the people who own the building.
Yes.
But many don't, many are open to
Depending on the
nonprofits
grants,
like the
yeah.
state of Vermont,
You know.
there's no problem.
Yeah, by the sounds of a nonprofit would be something that could be either included on the deed or transferred to a nonprofit. So I think, but right now, I think the best thing to do would be get the building up to snuff and we'll have a conversation about ownership.
And certainly if there was a committee, I'd be glad to work on it because I really am interested in it. I'm interested in seeing it go ahead. I will say that I was not born and brought up here, but I do take an interest in what's going on.
That's good.
Well, we don't want to take up your time, we appreciate your interest in getting involved, and we have some time to set a new direction, and
Let's make it happen.
yeah, we're also gonna be having, you know, new board members and stuff, so who knows where it's gonna go. With new-
Hopefully onward and upward.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for
Thank
coming in.
you. Yeah.
Look forward
Bye-bye.
to hearing from you again.
Thank you for your fuel tank.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
You're gonna come get it, right? You're gonna help me move it out?
You might,
I'll buy
might have a little
lunch.
dance out there at the
I'd
moment.
love to have conversations about how to incorporate after school.
Don't say too much on your neighbors.
K through 12. Historical setting. We know there's a pocket of kids in both schools that.
Well, thank you again for coming in.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for logging on.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye.
Oh, yeah, thanks,
Have a
Mark.
good night.
We'll be talking to you in the future, I'm sure.
Okay.
Run between the drops.
Actually sounds like a something.
Thank you.
I know, so
Good night.
All right, budget discussion. Hopefully this isn't anything super huge.
No, it's
Let's
really
keep it
quick.
short.
Really quick, I promise. We're gonna be starting the budgets in September. I have a meeting September 8th with all the department heads to start talking capital plans, capital projects. So between my homework assignment, I guess, for you guys is between now and the September 13th meeting. Please think of any projects that you would like to see pitched for the 2023 budget so we can start looking at numbers and what's gonna make the cut and what's not gonna make the cut for this year. I know we've kind of already briefly had that discussion to some degree, but think on it again if anything has come up, and then please come to the table with that on the 13th. And then by October, probably the second meeting in October, I'm hoping we'll actually have a draft budget to start looking at, so we can start narrowing down a lot of this, so we can get other grants sources or funding sources can be explored and applied for if need be.
I have a question, and maybe it just doesn't quite connect to this, but like back when Greta came and was asking about Vital Village project and applying for that grant, you know, we said, you know, not this year, because we wanna know about the other, we wanna get the master plan of what needs to be done with that space. Do we have the conversation about those projects and those expenses, and is this the time to talk about potentially budgeting grant matches for going at it for next year?
Yes.
Because that was the other thing, is we don't have the money in the budget this year.
So there was nothing in the budget this year for it. I have kind of the department heads and I met back in May after that conversation with Greta to get ballpark ideas of what it would cost. So right now we're looking at, if we go through with the infrastructure for Vital Village, we need to replace the water line all along Main Street. And we also need to, the storm drain needs to be replaced. Wastewater line that is there is okay. That was replaced in like the 90s, so that is what it needs to be. We're good there, there's no concerns there. And then, also exploring on the electric department side, putting the power underground. That needs to be engineered and explored with Comcast, consolidated.
And that was something that we had budgeted for this year, correct?
We did,
Kinda.
but kind of,
We needed the money elsewhere.
kind of diverted, I don't wanna say divert, but those funds that we were gonna use for out of savings, we put towards the Kendall, because
Yep.
that was priority to get that back up and running this year. So we didn't do the engineering. It was about 22,000, I think, was the
I certainly don't want to see the
I thought it was
buried
supposed to be
lines
40.
go away.
22 is what we budgeted.
Yeah, I went to Newport a couple weeks ago and it looks fantastic.
It's,
with-
we can't
with
do
no
it and
power.
leave those lines up.
The
We
only
just can't.
catch on that will be Consolidated and Comcast, because they also are on those poles, and there's no real benefit to them going underground, especially at the cost, so they may say,
They
no,
do
we
it
don't
elsewhere.
want to grow
Well,
lines.
have they received all of that federal, what communications funding? Remember there was a bunch of money going out a couple years ago
Mhm.
for infrastructure upgrades and stuff?
Let's
Has
find
that
out
vote
what
already
Newport
sailed?
did.
But not, it's really new build, nothing.
Yeah, so a lot of the funding, like John just said, is geared towards new projects, new build, new extension, line
New what?
extensions.
But
Yeah.
if Newport has anything to do with Comcast or Consolidated,
It'd
maybe
be-
we can find out what kind
It'd
of
be where
conversation
either
they had.
John or I can give them
And
a call.
Yeah, John, you wanna reach out?
at least we'll get a feel
I'll
for
find out, yeah.
what they might be thinking.
See what they did.
We do have Maple Park, which was decided with ARPA and the Church Street sidewalk, so I'm gonna get Gary on updating those quotes and getting us on somebody's schedule for the spring, so basically when it thaws, let's get those projects done, we have the money, there's no reason to wait on those projects for next year. So, but just, like I said, last year we were the meeting before, and then all of a sudden there was a bunch of ideas thrown out, so let's start being proactive from the beginning. It helps us have the time to research these projects for you guys, but.
Yeah,
so-
absolutely. Having some time to think about things is gonna be nice instead of a bunch of last minute.
Yeah,
Oh, this did make the
I
cut.
can still tell you that new crosswalk light is working.
I finally saw
I
somebody
can
use
stop a
it.
tractor trailer truck. It's working.
I don't think we do have it down necessarily, but maybe what we've talked about, it would be another set. And I think Sam, you had that, like, in front of, like, Wood Meadow.
Yeah,
that
there needs
spot.
to be one there.
Ah, there's no crosswalk.
There's no crosswalk.
It's past Wood Meadow, the
There
crosswalk.
is a crosswalk there,
Yes,
but
there-
nobody ever uses it because they
They're
don't
just
want,
cutting
they just
right
wanna
across.
scooter across the street.
No, it does get used. The
I
liquor
don't
store
know.
people only cross the street and go there, but the other people really do use the crosswalk. And I'm not gonna ask for money for it right now, cause I'll have to go back to Bethlehem, New Hampshire and find out how much it costs. But in Bethlehem, their crosswalks now have a white stripe on either side, like this, and instead of being striped or zigzagged in the middle, they are lime green.
I was
And
thinking that.
they show up like that.
I'll tell you the cheap way out of this, because when we were on our trip, when I was in Jackson, Wyoming, all they do is they have a crosswalk sign, and they've got these posts. And that's sticking out of the posts are orange flags. So you grab one, you wave it as you walk across, and you put it in the other side. I thought that was a pretty cheap, easy
yeah.
way out of that.
And unless somebody hits you and you lose the flag, you're all set.
Yeah, you stand on the side of the road,
Oh,
you wave it,
yeah,
and then everybody stops, then you wave as you go across, and you put on the other side, and the next person uses it to come back across.
There's other things too, like, you can get these signs that go in the middle of the road, they kind of like flop
Like
with
state
their head.
signs.
Yeah, they say like slow, yield for pedestrians and stuff.
We had one of those, like Ken said it
Got creamed.
took a beating.
Yeah.
I'd be
finally
surprised if that's.
Very
Okay, so
quickly.
yeah, so something for that sidewalk could be something that we can bring up in the.
Yeah,
in the
so
budget.
for September 13th, bring your thought, email me ahead of time.
Yeah,
If you're
whenever-
thinking,
whenever-
whatever you think of it, shoot me an email, shoot me a text. I can compile a list, but let's be as proactive as we can this year, so it's not
Well, I'm on 3 more on Maine already.
January 31st.
And then one down on
Yeah,
Pearl.
yeah.
Right,
Or,
'cause you
or
guys-
end of February,
Yeah.
we're gonna make our yearly
Oh,
report.
we need
Okay,
a
alright, so we good on budget?
crosswalk or a sidewalk.
Manager's
Probably-
report? Oh, sorry, no more?
I was just kind of remembering about some point in the future, there will be the town.
Yeah,
Yeah, someday we might need to do that, but
But I don't know.
It's on my
if
list
due
already.
yet. Perfect.
Alright, let's move on to manager's report.
if they ever get going, we can get going.
Alright, nothing too crazy here, quick and easy. So NEPA conference you approved for Abby and I to go to is very informative. I mean, I think one of the priorities was we got to meet and greet a bunch of different people. We met Jackie, who is the consultant for VEPSA for AMI. So we had a nice chat with her, and we also met some other unis, because that's a New England thing. So we met some unis that are doing some of these projects that we're looking into doing.
Good. It's always good to network.
So we did network pretty well there. A couple of the speeches were a little way up there.
Well, it was a conference after all.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't say way up there as in, yeah, the people are wicked smart, but at the same time, it's definitely futuristic. It's not tomorrow or even 10 years from now, I'm thinking, but the biggest takeaway we had was, you know, everybody's looking at alternative energy, you know, and so forth. EV, there's a good presentation on EV and kind of just the breakdown of that. So, but overall, good conference, good couple days to be there and listen to those folks.
Well, and a bunch of folks got to meet you, so that was good too.
Yeah. I just want to thank Abby and her tenaciousness. So we've been working on that crosswalk, Kate Bennett crosswalk over by the school, and Abby's been pushing.
That was his nice way of saying I'm
But-
really pushy.
Okay.
Despite
No, assertive.
Depending on the weather, maybe next week, we're shooting to get done before school, but you know, within the first week or two of school, it should be operational, so that's been a nice thing.
You found somebody to pour?
Huh?
You found somebody to do something?
Yeah,
we found somebody.
I got annoyed with the whole thing last week and just started calling everybody.
She went out the door and, well, yeah, then she wasn't coming back.
So when we need stuff done, we just need to annoy her. It's good to know.
Max Concrete, Ryan Magnet, got back to me. He's a newer business that he set up and came and looked at it and was no questions asked. I'll be here. So the weather didn't cooperate this week. We were gonna actually pour this week.
Good enough.
So hopefully by the end of next week is my goal. We should have a new crosswalk. We have the signs, we have everything, we're ready to go. We just need to, our guys are gonna demo and stuff and he's gonna just show up and pour, so it'll be great.
Perfect.
Can we schedule like some sort of like
Ribbon cutting.
yes.
We are.
So
With Kate and.
I've been communicating with Kate and Catherine through this whole process. Kate is super excited that, you know, the board has taken her seriously and is running with the project, and I told her that I will be, when we're doing it, so she could pop in for some photo op and that there will be some type of press release and photo or something. I was thinking a picture of her being the first one going across on the crosswalk or doing something.
Putting a trowel in the cement.
There will be something. We plan on doing something with Kate to really
Just
Get her imprint.
support her. Right?
And to support the new business too, you know, getting his name out.
Yes, absolutely. That's wonderful.
Yeah, like that he didn't hesitate. This is not a moneymaker by any means, and
It's
he's
okay. That may come back to him in kind in more ways than he'll ever know.
the community aspect of it, so we're definitely appreciative of Ryan for getting back to us on that.
So the open house is going through. It is gonna be the 17th. It is gonna be, we landed on a date, it's not on your copy, but it is gonna be 9 to 1. We've just been doing some research. There's a lot of stuff going on that day, and especially into the night. So we figured we'd kind of hopefully get some people here before the lunch was served and get them through, and then probably trickle out by noon, we're guessing. So I can pass around. This will be in the biller going out, and then we'll be advertising at Facebook and so forth. We do have a bunch of our vendors that are donating items. We're working on some giveaways of the service charge.
Free electric car.
Free electric.
Yeah.
It's a little one, but
That's-
it's free.
Some of the next folks will be there. So if any of the trustees want to swing by and
Leonard, I have to work at Harvest Fest all day, so you must go to the open house for the village. Thank you very much.
Okay.
That was easy.
So yeah, I mean, basically we'll be there. We're trying to get, VEPSA's trying to get Efficiency Vermont there as well. We just have some logistics stuff still work out as far
It
as.
would be good to get them there with like a little booth or something.
They do a lot of giveaways and a lot of stuff. Yeah, they're.
well.
And in the end, the more people that we have sign up for some of these rebates, it helps us with those tier credits we were talking about, so.
just the PR alone is gonna be worth your while for the day.
So we're hoping, we're gonna keep advertising it and mark, you know, our Facebook page and all that stuff.
John gets all the credit for our flyer that is going in with our bills.
That's pretty cool. Should attract attention.
So again, the Kendall is up, I mean, I guess Abby went over that, the Kendall is up and running and been running pretty smoothly. We had one more hookup, but it's been basically up and running, so that's been good. Again, as Abby knowing a little bit more than me, being ahead of the curve, starting a little bit before me, but I'm learning quickly, you know, even those hydros are gonna be very important as we talk about. Credits, and again, it's what they call
Ties in with your transmission and having them
transmission
running on the
costs.
peak hours.
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
Peak
yeah.
hours,
Yeah.
yep,
So
saves
that
us
is-
a lot.
It did, in the last month, it did, we had some cost savings, we're waiting for the report from Pepsi again, what was it? It was like, it dropped like 40,000 or something last, cause we luckily had a wet.
Why am
I
I?
Keep praying for rain.
I printed this.
Yeah.
Don't wanna water my tomatoes anymore.
Right?
So,
Yeah, it was equivalent to like $40,000 to $45,000 is what we produced and essentially saved
And how long of a period?
a
a
month.
month.
A month, yeah, that's.
Does it-
10 months you got your AMI project.
Kinda makes us feel a little better.
Right.
And again, that's it's all considered behind the meter, so that just generates, then we're just essentially just not buying what we
Right.
need because we're generating it ourselves, so. But again, there's a lot to learn there. We're
So
still
that's
learning.
why I'm the crazy hydro lady.
That's where the money is.
It is, we've been monitoring and watching, you know, for
Great
the
job.
past couple months. And it's interesting, you almost, it's like like maple sugar or whatever, you know, when you start to boil, you just start to really watch everything. You start to understand more and more, and, it's interesting, cause it's like, there's days that we had like this scenario, just downpoured at the right time. The river rose and we were able to produce more.
Right at peak probably.
And right at peak,
Amazing,
yeah.
yeah.
And you're like, holy mackerel, that
It was
was
ka-ching.
working out. So, then just last I have is the digger truck. Again, that was something we've been tossing around. I've been watching auction sites and so forth, and we're gonna keep watching them. The inspection's due on that in a month. We do have the Ludlow, we talked to the Ludlow manager.
They still have it.
Still no change?
He won't drop the price, he's still got it, so if worst comes to worst, we have that one to lean on, but we're gonna keep our eyes open and keep looking.
And we still have the new quotes. I mean, I'm sure we'd have to get them to update them because they were good for 30 days, but that, as we may have to have this conversation sooner rather than later, depending on how our inspection goes. We are scheduled, I think,
Yeah,
mid next
that'll-
month.
If it comes back as a bad inspection, I think
It'll be
Push
It'll
will
be
come to
done.
shove in a hurry.
It'll be done, we won't have a digger truck at that point in time, so. There's a lot that, I don't wanna make any impulsive decisions either, because with, AMI, when we get into the budget and start talking about this capital planning, we really gotta be careful of the timing of how all of this is hitting our ratepayers and our budget, so. But unfortunately, we have our inspection next month and fingers crossed with a boom, so.
But we are constantly we're watching the sites and
Yeah.
trying to find them. I've got some guys in the trucking business that I've put my feelers out to and stuff, so we're trying. But is there anything else? I think I've been on 2 auctions and it's like anything else you watch an auction, it's like you want $1,000 for it and then 5 minutes before it's 50, 60, holy mackerel. And that's all I had. I guess just a follow up to MEPSA, and again, we're really trying to work with that Sean. Sean's a sharp guy when it comes to the rec markets and analysts. Just trying to dig in and understand where it's all coming from. I guess the good news is it's a level set. Every uni's in the same spot.
Yeah.
I mean, Green Mountain Power's the same, everybody's in the same spot. Where do they get it? Some have more capital than others, basically. It's the only advantage. I sent that set plan. Again, if you're earlier bored at night and you can't fall asleep, you can probably read through that. But again, it's 250 pages of what the expectation is, but they don't really give any outline on how to be successful, and it's gonna fall on us, so. As we start talking AMI and solar and stuff, that's where a lot of that's coming from. It's just, that's what we have to adhere to, so. That's all I had.
All right, thank you, John. Other business?
I just wanna ask, are we still sort of in line for thinking about the, changing the ordinance for the, alcohol in the park thing?
Yeah, it's been,
The
it's in the
time
paper.
frame and the,
It's already been posted in the paper.
Yeah.
okay,
It's all,
good.
the ball rolled,
Read the papers.
the ball rolled really quickly with that one for you, Sandy, so it's
Yeah.
just a matter of, it has to be posted for so long and then it will go into
14
effect.
And we do have one, and I hopefully will get the paperwork very soon, one alcohol vendor coming to Harvest Fest. I was supposed to get a phone call today from Marlboro, Vermont, and did not hear from them, so I'm,
Who is it?
this one is Distillers of Vermont that make just a cutthroat maple bourbon that's just wonderful. And he literally said to me Saturday morning, I have to talk to my son and we have to decide if this really is worth our while. And they sold out of almost everything last year. So that's telling me that either their manpower is down like everybody else and so things are tighter, or they're selling at venues much bigger than the Rinky Dink Harvest Fest and therefore can't afford to come to us. But Groenfeld Meadery out of Georgia, Vermont, I believe, is, yeah, is going to be with us.
There's a red leaf brewing in Jeffersonville. It's pretty good.
Tried them all. Oh, well, so is 10 Bends, they're wonderful, but I can, it's the very same answer from everybody.
I wasn't sure if like they were.
We're
you
really
knew of them,
sorry.
so.
We would love to do your
I don't
festival,
want,
but
I
we
don't
have
wanna
no help.
stop your beer chat, but we gotta,
I'm
is
done.
there any other business that is pertaining to the village? Hearing none, I will hear a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations in which premature public knowledge may compromise the position of the municipality and for discussion of personnel. Heather with the first, Ryan with the second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. Alright, we're in executive.